A 68-year-old man named Harold came to me 3 years ago. He had spent his entire career as a structural engineer. Precise, methodical, the kind of man who could hold complex calculations in his head for hours without writing a single thing down. His wife brought him in, not because he was sick, because he had changed. He was forgetting conversations they had the night before. He was snapping at small things. He was waking up at 3 in the morning and lying there until dawn, and then dragging himself through the day exhausted. He had been doing this for 2 years. 2 years, and every time his wife suggested something was wrong, he said the same thing: "I'm just getting older. This is what getting older feels like." He was wrong. And by the time I sat with him, the damage that had already accumulated inside his brain was real, measurable, and in part preventable. I'm Dr. Kevin Adewale. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon. I've spent over 30 years operating on hearts, repairing arteries, and studying what happens when the body is denied the one thing it cannot survive without: sleep. What I'm about to share with you, most doctors won't bring up at your annual checkup. But after 60, it matters more than you think. There are 5 specific things that happen to your brain when sleep is consistently disrupted or shortened after the age of 60. 5 things that are happening right now, silently, in the brains of millions of people who believe they are simply aging. Today I am going to walk you through every one of them. I am going to explain exactly what is happening inside your brain, and I am going to give you something concrete to do about it. Stay with me. Before we get into the 5 things, I need you to understand something that most people have never been told about sleep and the aging brain. Sleep is not rest. That is a fundamental misunderstanding that costs people dearly. Sleep is not the absence of activity. It is the most biologically active period your brain experiences in a 24-hour cycle. Your brain during sleep is not quiet. It is working harder than at almost any other point in the day. And after 60, the quality and quantity of that work changes in ways that carry serious consequences. Think of it this way: your brain generates waste products throughout the day, metabolic byproducts, toxic proteins, the cellular debris of a brain that has been thinking, processing, and functioning for 16 hours. During the day, your brain has no efficient system for clearing that waste. It accumulates. But during deep sleep, your brain activates a remarkable system called the glymphatic system, a network of channels that flushes that toxic waste out of the brain tissue and into the bloodstream for disposal. The entire cleaning crew, and it only works the night shift. Here is the problem after 60. The architecture of sleep changes significantly with age. Deep slow-wave sleep, the stage where the glymphatic system is most active, decreases by approximately 50% between the ages of 30 and 60. 50%. The cleaning crew is already working shorter hours. And when poor sleep habits, stress, medication, or undiagnosed sleep disorders reduce what little deep sleep remains, the consequences compound rapidly. A landmark report in The Lancet identified poor sleep as one of 12 modifiable risk factors for dementia, alongside smoking, physical inactivity, and uncontrolled hypertension. Modifiable, that word matters. It means changeable. It means what happens next is not fixed. What you do about your sleep either protects your brain or leaves it exposed. Let me show you exactly what I mean. The first thing that happens to your brain when you don't sleep after 60 is one that most people have heard a name for but have never understood the mechanism behind: beta-amyloid plaque accumulation. The same plaque that is found in the brains of Alzheimer's patients, building up night after night. Here's why most people dismiss this. They think plaque buildup is a genetic fate, something that either runs in your family or doesn't. They think it happens over decades and there is nothing to be done about it. And they have absolutely no idea that what they do every single night either accelerates or slows that process dramatically. But here's what nobody tells you. Beta-amyloid is not some mysterious invader that arrives from outside. It is a normal metabolic byproduct produced by your own brain cells every single day. In a brain that sleeps properly, the glymphatic system flushes it out every night, efficiently, reliably. In a brain that does not sleep properly, it stays, it accumulates, and beta-amyloid that is not cleared does not simply sit harmlessly in brain tissue. It clumps, it forms plaques between neurons, and those plaques begin to interfere with the electrical signals that neurons use to communicate with one another. Here's what's actually happening inside your body. During the deepest stages of slow-wave sleep, the glymphatic channels in the brain expand by up to 60%. Cerebrospinal fluid floods through those expanded channels surrounding neurons, washing out the accumulated beta-amyloid and other neurotoxic waste and carrying it away. Without sufficient deep sleep, those channels never fully expand, the flush never fully happens, the waste stays behind. One night of poor sleep measurably increases beta-amyloid levels in the brain. One night, not a decade of neglect. One night. A study published in the journal Nature found that even a single night of sleep deprivation led to a significant increase in beta-amyloid accumulation in the human brain, particularly in the hippocampus and thalamus, the regions most associated with memory and cognitive function. The researchers could measure it the morning after. That is not a worst-case scenario, that is the mechanism, that is what I see reflected in the neurology literature every year, with increasing clarity. The practical fix is specific. Your glymphatic system requires a consistent, uninterrupted sleep window of 7 to 8 hours to complete its work. Not 6, not 5 and a weekend catch-up, 7 to 8, at the same time every night. The circadian system that governs glymphatic activation is tied directly to a consistent sleep-wake schedule. Irregular sleep, even with the same total hours, disrupts the timing of that activation. Choose a bedtime, keep it 7 days a week, and the second thing catches people completely off guard because it shows up not in a brain scan but in a conversation. The second thing that happens is something people experience every day and almost universally attribute to aging: forgetting things they were told, losing the thread of a conversation, walking into a room and having no idea why, misplacing items, struggling to recall names of people they know well. Here's why most people dismiss this. They are told it is normal aging. Every doctor visit, every reassurance from family, every article they read tells them that mild forgetfulness is simply part of getting older. And some of it is, but here's where people get dangerously confused. There is a profound difference between the mild word retrieval slowing of normal aging and the systemic memory consolidation failure of chronic sleep deprivation. They look identical from the outside. They are not, but here's what most people never hear. Memory is not stored during the day. Memory is consolidated during the night. What you experience during the day, a conversation, a name, a new piece of information, exists in a temporary holding structure in the hippocampus. It is not permanent, it is not saved. During deep NREM sleep, the hippocampus replays those experiences and transfers them to long-term storage in the cortex. That transfer is the moment the memory becomes permanent. Without sufficient deep NREM sleep, the transfer does not happen. The memory file is not saved, it is lost, not delayed, lost. Here's what's actually happening inside your body. During deep non-NREM sleep, the brain generates slow oscillating electrical waves, sleep spindles, that coordinate the replay and transfer of hippocampal memories to cortical storage. This process cannot be compressed, it cannot be substituted. It requires adequate time in deep sleep, and it requires that deep sleep to be uninterrupted. Every time sleep is fragmented by waking, by light sleep, by noise, by apnea, those spindles are disrupted and the transfer is incomplete. A study published in JAMA Neurology found that adults over 60 with disrupted sleep architecture showed significantly greater rates of episodic memory decline over a 5-year period than those with intact deep sleep, independent of other risk factors. The sleep was the variable, not the age, not the genetics. The sleep. The single most powerful thing you can do to protect your memory consolidation is to stop drinking alcohol within 3 hours of going to bed. Alcohol is sedating, it helps people fall asleep. That is the trap, because alcohol systematically suppresses deep NREM sleep. You fall asleep faster and wake up feeling like you slept, but the memory consolidating deep sleep never came. The files were never saved. This is one of the most common and most overlooked causes of accelerating memory problems in adults over 60. A single glass of wine at 9 o'clock can be enough to disrupt consolidation for the entire night. But the next one is where things become far more serious and far more personal. This is the one that surprises almost every patient I tell it to, because it does not feel like a brain problem, it feels like a life problem, like stress, like circumstances, like the world becoming genuinely harder to manage. It is none of those things. It is sleep deprivation dismantling the emotional regulation system of the brain. Here's why most people never connect their anxiety or irritability to their sleep. They have real stressors, a health issue, a family concern, financial worry. They attribute their emotional state to those stressors entirely, and when they sleep badly, they assume it is the anxiety causing the insomnia. They have the causality exactly backwards. The sleep deprivation is driving the anxiety, not the other way around. But here's what most people have never been told. After just one night of poor sleep, the amygdala, the brain's threat detection and emotional response center, becomes measurably more reactive. Not slightly more reactive, 60% more reactive. Every perceived threat is amplified. Every worry feels more urgent. Every irritation feels more significant. The world does not change. The brain's filter does. Here's what's actually happening inside your body. Under normal conditions, the prefrontal cortex, the rational executive region of the brain, maintains a regulating connection to the amygdala. When the amygdala fires an alarm, the prefrontal cortex evaluates the threat and modulates the response. It is the brain's emotional brake system. During sleep, particularly during REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex processes and recalibrates the emotional charge of the day's experiences. It essentially detoxifies the emotional content of memory, preserving the information but reducing the raw emotional intensity. Without sufficient REM sleep, that recalibration does not happen. The emotional charge accumulates, the prefrontal cortex weakens its regulatory grip, and the amygdala begins to operate unchecked. Research from the sleep laboratory at the University of California, Berkeley, led by neuroscientist Matthew Walker, demonstrated that a single night of sleep deprivation produced a 60% increase in amygdala reactivity in study participants. The prefrontal amygdala connection was functionally severed. The emotional brake system had failed. That sounds dramatic. It isn't dramatic. It is the biological explanation for why people who sleep poorly feel like they are losing control of their emotions. Because in a meaningful neurological sense, they are. The fix is environmental and specific. The most powerful trigger for deep sleep onset is a drop in core body temperature. Your body needs to lose approximately 1 to 1.5 degrees of core temperature to initiate and sustain deep sleep. Your bedroom must support that process. Keep it below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius. Use lighter bedding if necessary. Keep the room dark and cool. That temperature environment is not a comfort preference. It is a neurological requirement. Let me ask you something direct. Have you noticed that you feel more anxious, more irritable, more easily overwhelmed on the days after a bad night? That small frustrations feel larger than they should, that your patience is shorter and your worry is louder? Tell me in the comments below. I want to know how many of you recognize that pattern, because understanding that it is your sleep and not your circumstances changes absolutely everything about how you approach it. The fourth thing is one that most people would never think to connect to sleep, because it feels like a heart and vessel problem, and it is, but it is a heart and vessel problem that begins in the brain during the hours you are supposed to be sleeping. Here's why most people never connect stroke risk to sleep quality. They manage their blood pressure with medication, they reduce their salt, they exercise, they believe that what happens at night while they are asleep is simply not relevant to their cardiovascular risk. They are wrong, and the research on this is unambiguous. But here's what most doctors don't have time to explain. In a healthy cardiovascular system, blood pressure follows a predictable 24-hour curve. It rises during the day, it peaks in the late afternoon, and at night, during sleep, it drops 10 to 20% below its daytime levels. This nocturnal dip is not an accident. It is the cardiovascular system's nightly maintenance window. The arterial walls decompress, the heart rate slows, the entire system rests and repairs. We call someone whose pressure dips normally a dipper, and someone whose pressure does not dip a non-dipper. Here's what's actually happening inside your body. During disrupted sleep, whether from insomnia, frequent waking, or sleep apnea, the sympathetic nervous system remains partially activated throughout the night. The fight or flight system never fully disengages. Cortisol and adrenaline continue to circulate at low levels, and those hormones prevent the nocturnal blood pressure dip from occurring. The arterial walls never decompress, the heart never fully rests, and the cumulative effect of night after night of sustained elevated nocturnal pressure on vessel walls that are already stiffer than they were at 40 is serious. Non-dipping hypertension, pattern of blood pressure that does not fall at night, is associated with a 3 times higher stroke risk compared to adults whose pressure dips normally during sleep. 3 times, not 20% higher, not modestly elevated, 3 times. A major analysis published in The Lancet confirmed that sleep disruption is independently associated with elevated risk of stroke and cardiovascular events, with the relationship being particularly strong in adults over 60 who have pre-existing hypertension. The sleep was not a side note in that analysis. It was a primary variable. The action step here requires a specific conversation with your doctor. If you are sleeping poorly, waking frequently, struggling to stay asleep, or snoring heavily, ask at your next appointment for a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. Not a clinic reading, not a home cuff taken at 9 in the morning. A monitor worn for a full 24 hours that captures your nocturnal blood pressure pattern. That data will tell your doctor something your clinic readings cannot, and if you are a non-dipper, your treatment plan needs to reflect that. The fifth thing is the one I wish more people were warned about years earlier. The fifth thing is where everything we have discussed comes together into a single sobering reality. Chronic sleep deprivation after 60 does not simply increase the risk of dementia at some distant point in the future. It actively accelerates the pace at which the brain declines right now. Every year, every decade, the clock is not just ticking, it is running faster than it should. Here's why most people dismiss dementia risk as something they cannot influence. They think it is genetics, they think it is age, they know their family history, and they either worry or they don't, but they believe the outcome is largely predetermined. That belief is not supported by the current science, and it is costing people years of cognitive health they did not have to lose. But here's what the research now makes clear. The Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention, and Care, one of the most comprehensive analyses of dementia risk factors ever conducted, identified poor sleep as one of 12 modifiable risk factors for dementia. The same list includes smoking, physical inactivity, excessive alcohol, and untreated hearing loss. Sleep is in that company, and it belongs there. Here's what's actually happening inside your body. Chronic sleep deprivation creates a compounding biological environment for accelerated brain aging. The glymphatic system is not clearing beta-amyloid, the plaques accumulate, memory consolidation is failing night after night, hippocampal volume, which is directly tied to the number and health of sleep cycles, begins to shrink faster than in well-sleeping adults. Chronic neuroinflammation, driven partly by the same waste accumulation the glymphatic system was designed to prevent, begins to damage neural connections. Emotional dysregulation creates chronic low-level cortisol elevation, and cortisol is directly neurotoxic to the hippocampus at sustained levels. Each of these processes accelerates the others. It is not one mechanism, it is 5 mechanisms reinforcing each other simultaneously. And the net result, according to multiple longitudinal studies, is that adults over 60 who consistently sleep fewer than 6 hours per night show cognitive aging equivalent to 5 to 8 additional years of brain aging per decade, compared to those who sleep 7 to 8 hours. 5 to 8 years per decade of brain function, lost to something that was preventable. If you are waking more than twice a night consistently, if you snore heavily, if your partner has ever told you that you stop breathing during sleep, please do not dismiss that. Over 30% of adults over 60 have obstructive sleep apnea, and the vast majority have never been diagnosed. They have never been told. CPAP therapy, when consistently used, has been shown in clinical trials to reverse the pattern of nocturnal non-dipping, reduce cardiovascular risk, improve memory consolidation, and significantly slow the rate of cognitive decline. One diagnosis, one treatment, enormous protection. Ask your doctor for a sleep study referral. It may be the most important medical conversation you have this year. Let me bring these 5 things together clearly before I give you the plan. Because every single one of them is happening right now, tonight, in the brains of people who are sleeping fewer hours than their brain requires, or sleeping in conditions that prevent the deep restorative stages from occurring. The brain's waste clearance system is not flushing beta-amyloid because the glymphatic channels never fully open. The memories of the day are not being consolidated because the hippocampal transfer process is being cut short. The emotional regulation system is failing because the prefrontal cortex is not recalibrating the amygdala overnight. The cardiovascular system is not getting its nightly maintenance window because nocturnal blood pressure is not dipping. And the cumulative effect of all 4 of those failures, compounding every night over months and years, is accelerating the aging of the brain in ways that feel like ordinary decline, but are not. Knowledge without action is just worry. And I'm not here to make you anxious, I'm here to give you a plan. I call this the Brain Protective Sleep Protocol. No prescription needed, no expensive equipment, 5 steps, and they start tonight. Step 1. Set a consistent bedtime and wake time and keep them identical every single day, including weekends. The glymphatic system and the memory consolidation system are both governed by circadian timing. Irregular sleep, even with the same total hours, disrupts the activation of both systems. Choose your times, write them down, keep them as consistently as you keep any medication schedule. Step 2. Set your bedroom temperature below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, before you sleep tonight. Core body temperature drop is the neurological trigger for deep slow-wave sleep onset. If your bedroom is warm, your brain cannot make that transition efficiently. This single environmental change can meaningfully improve the depth and continuity of your sleep within the first week. Step 3. Stop all alcohol consumption at least 3 hours before bed. I know this is not what many people want to hear, but alcohol's suppression of deep NREM sleep is well documented and dose-dependent. Even one drink close to bedtime reduces slow-wave sleep by a clinically significant amount. Your memory consolidation, your glymphatic function, and your emotional recalibration during REM sleep are all impaired by alcohol taken in the evening. The trade-off is not worth it. Step 4. Remove all screens, phone, tablet, television from your bedroom routine 45 minutes before sleep. The blue wavelength light emitted by screens suppresses melatonin production by up to 50%. Melatonin is not simply a sleep hormone, it is one of the key signals that initiates the drop in core body temperature required for deep sleep onset. Without it, the brain's sleep architecture is compromised from the very beginning of the night. Step 5. If you are waking more than twice a night on a consistent basis, if you snore heavily, if you wake feeling unrefreshed after a full night in bed, speak to your doctor this week and ask for a referral for a sleep study. These are not minor inconveniences. They are clinical signals that warrant investigation. Sleep apnea in particular is dramatically underdiagnosed in adults over 60, and its cardiovascular and cognitive consequences are serious and reversible with treatment. 5 steps. That is the complete protocol. Begin with step 1 tonight. Choose your bedtime, set your wake time, and tomorrow morning you will have taken the first concrete action toward protecting the most important organ in your body. I want to come back to Harold for a moment. After we spoke, his wife scheduled him for a comprehensive sleep study. The results showed moderate obstructive sleep apnea, 27 breathing interruptions per hour, each one triggering a micro-arousal, each one preventing him from reaching or sustaining deep slow-wave sleep, each one firing a small cortisol and adrenaline response while the rest of him was supposed to be resting. He had been doing this every night for years, and no one had told him. He started CPAP therapy. 4 months later, he came back to see me. His wife sat next to him. She said he was back, not all the way, but back, sleeping through the night, calmer in the mornings, sharper in conversation. The man she had watched disappear over 2 years was returning in pieces. He looked at me and said, "The thing I have heard more times than I can count in this work." He said, "Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" That question has stayed with me ever since. It is a big part of why I make these videos. Let me bring it all together one final time. When you do not sleep adequately after 60, the glymphatic system cannot flush beta-amyloid from the brain, and plaque accumulates on a timeline driven by your nightly habits, not just your genetics. Memory consolidation fails because the hippocampus cannot complete the transfer of daily experiences to long-term storage, and those memories are not delayed, they are lost. Emotional regulation deteriorates because the prefrontal cortex cannot recalibrate the amygdala during REM sleep, and anxiety and irritability become chronic, not circumstantial. The cardiovascular system loses its nightly maintenance window because nocturnal blood pressure never dips, and stroke risk rises in ways that daytime readings will never capture. And all 4 of those processes together accelerate the cognitive aging of the brain by years per decade, years that did not have to be lost. You now have information that most people will never receive. Use it. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 things surprised you most today? Was it the glymphatic system and the plaque connection? Was it the alcohol and memory consolidation link? Or was it the stroke risk from a pattern your doctor may never have tested for? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your answers genuinely shape what I cover next. If this video gave you something useful, something you did not have when you sat down to watch it, share it, not for me, for the person in your life who is waking at 3 in the morning and telling everyone they are fine, who is becoming more anxious and blaming the world, who is forgetting things and calling it age. They may not know what is happening, but you do now, and that is exactly why you are here. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. Every week I bring you honest, evidence-based information that I wish every one of my patients had access to long before they needed surgery. Take care of your heart. It has been working for you every single minute of every single day without asking for anything in return. Give it what it needs. It is a fair trade. One last thing, and this is important. Everything I have shared today is general medical information based on published research and my clinical experience as a cardiac surgeon. It is not a substitute for your personal medical care. Please do not make changes to your medications or treatment without speaking to your own physician first. They know your history. I do not. This is education. Use it as the beginning of that conversation.